to the cloud.
Awesome. And there's Judith joining us. So I'll have a few more people jumping in. Andres, do you mind if I do the introductions and then I can pass things over to you and you can introduce yourself as well? Awesome. So some of you, hello, I'm Mike Zimmerman in this little box in this wonderful Brady Bunch setup right now. And I am the one of the OTL fellows for spring 2021. Some of you may have stopped by the forum that we did on Tuesday on Zoom. And we're going to be doing another one today on innovative pedagogy. So I have a few little neat things to show you today, and hopefully we'll have a lot of fun with that. And I'm going to be joined today also with my colleague from the TTC, Andres Montenegro Rosero. So Andres, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Everybody, thanks Michael for that. I'm Andres. I am at the TTC. I'm a fellow at the TTC, but I'm based in the Department of Art History and Theory. Not art history and theory, art and art history. I'm sorry, I'm just reading a book on theory, so my brain is still in that mode. I'm very glad to be a part of this workshop, and I especially wanted to talk to you in just a little bit about my use of a specific video game, Assassin's Creed, the entire series, and how I incorporate it in my teaching of introductory courses, especially of art history 103s. So I really wanted to, that's my piece for the day.
Awesome. So I figure, Andres, what we'll do is we'll talk about a couple of other aspects of innovative pedagogy. We'll jump into you using Assassin's Creed for your introductory courses, and then I can jump into how I use Civilization 5 in my upper level archaeology course, and just as a couple of examples of games and gamification. So what I'd like to do, because we have a relatively small group here, is I'd just like to open it up to people to either express in the chat, or you can use the raise hand button, or whatever you want to do. What things do you currently do in the classroom? What activities, what tools, what do you currently do in the classroom that you would consider innovative?
I'll go first. I'm using a video game, and this is the first semester I'm requiring it, although I do give my students an opt-out, and I do want to maybe discuss that later about if students don't like video games, what do we do? But they're playing Valiant Hearts, which is set in World War I, and then we watched the film Paths of Glory by Stanley Kubrick.
Nice. Anybody else? What else do people do? Is there anything that people do in the classroom that they might consider innovative?
I can piggyback a little bit on what Richard was saying. I also use video games in the classroom to teach my art history stuff. I very often bring my console whenever we could do face-to-face teaching. So I would bring my Xbox, and that was always a glorious moment for my students to see a console being deployed in the setting of the classroom. I usually have them play, so specific students play the game in the classroom so that they show around some of the students, so that it gives them a little bit of ownership almost of how they go about some of these art historical monuments. So that's, you know, another way that I am using the video games, not just as sort of homework where students can research stuff, but also in the actual classroom.
And that's the great thing. At least I think about games and game-based learning. Another great person to talk about this with is Lisa Boragine from Communication Studies. She's a great person to talk to about it. I've also used, when we were face-to-face, would use board games in the classroom. One of the great things about using board games in the classroom or role-playing games in the classroom is that they can be very much situational. So for example, one of the things we do in anthropology classes is we do role-play examples of culture shock. How do people experience things such as ethnocentrism, for example, when they travel abroad? So that's a great thing that we do. And Eric, both myself and a few other professors have also used virtual reality in the classroom as well as part of the Immersive Classroom Initiative through the TTC. correct? Awesome. Anybody else?
We did that last year, right around this time of the year, right, Eric? Right before the pandemic.
Just
Yeah.
before it all
Right.
shut down, I remember
yeah,
wiping down
about
the headsets.
Yeah, about 3 centuries ago.
And but it sort of turned out to be somehow perfect because we were able to go to the Guggenheim Museum, which we were going to go with my students, and instead of being able to go because of the pandemic, we were able to go in the classroom through the virtual reality initiative, which I thought, at least in the humanities, it has so many obvious practical applications. But I remember having conversations with colleagues in other fields, and they were starting to see how maybe some of the video games, especially some of the mapping techniques within some of these video games and some of that mapping technology could also spread to STEM and other fields that are not necessarily, if they're narrative based or visually based. I remember having a conversation with someone about calculating the velocity of a bullet required for a sniper to get someone in Call of Duty, and how they used a video game example in order to incorporate a math question within the classroom, which I thought was fascinating because it sort of never would have occurred to me.
And the other great thing, particularly about the VR, is being able to immerse students in places where they couldn't go ordinarily, which has become so important during the pandemic. I've been able to assign my students a VR exercise where they go into a virtual reality environment of an archaeological site. In STEM education, you could create a virtual reality environment of a lab, for example, so that students could navigate a lab without having to go to campus.
We've found some online. I didn't know we could actually create them ourselves, though, so that's kind of cool.
We can. Eric has all sorts of toys, and as soon as he is done with what I am sure has been over a year of sleepless nights at this point, I'm sure he would be more than happy to share them. Now, in terms of games, another great option for students is scavenger hunts. Now, the idea of virtual scavenger hunts is really interesting. There's a great site for this called Scaver, right? SCAVR, right? And this is a website that allows you to create your own scavenger hunts for students or for any other activity. And I'm going to post the URL in the chat now. The cool thing about this is you can create scavenger hunts that are about navigating different things. So for example, I've created a scavenger hunt for all of y'all today that we're going to play around with today. That's going to be fun. And you can also create scavenger hunts in which student responses are photos. Student responses can also be geotagged. So for example, when we're back in person, if you want students to go outside and explore the campus and get to know the campus, especially if you have freshmen in a freshman seminar, you can assign a virtual scavenger hunt where the results are different geotags of different spots around campus. Responses can be QR codes, they can be videos, they can be all sorts of different things. One of the things that I constantly get asked, and Cynthia, this is very, very useful for you in particular, is how do we introduce students to the resources that are on campus through the library, through the Academic Achievement Center? Very often we put this information on our syllabi, but as we all know, students do not read the syllabi as closely as they should. Creating a scavenger hunt assignment that requires students to navigate the library website or through geotags or photos to navigate the library itself, right? When they're back in person, we could say, I want you to find the interlibrary loan and document delivery services department in the library and geotag yourself there. Or I'd like to see you order this article through ILL and post a screenshot of you finding the article. I'd love to see you find this library resource that's available. Where's the digitization department? Where are the archives in the library? So these are all sorts of things that we can do, especially for freshman students. So what I've done today is I've created a scavenger hunt that is focused around the Academic Achievement Center. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share that with y'all now. I'm going to break you into, let's go with, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10. Why am I doing this when they actually have the number of participants here? We have 15 participants. So why don't we go with 5 breakout groups of 3 people each. And we're going to go to the, I'm going to share the questions with you. And we're going to go to the Academic Achievement Center website. The first team to come up with answers to all 5 questions can leave the breakout room and gets bragging rights for the remainder of the forum today. So I'm going to dive into that now. So I've created this scavenger hunt. I'm going to, whoops, pause the hunt. I got to share it first. Hold on, I clicked share before I went to, there we go. So Zoom, pause. I've got to, how do I click share? There we go. Sorry, I clicked launch before I clicked share, and therein lies the problem. So what I'm going to do is to share, I'm just going to share the URL here in the chat. So you should be able to go directly to this challenge, and I'm going to start the hunt. So go to the intranet page for the AAC once you get in your breakout room, and the first person to answer all 5 of these questions, leave your breakout room and let me know. Eric. Do them at Bridgewater State, and it's a fun and innovative way to do so, especially if you can have questions that aren't just password answers like these, but can be photos, videos, geotags, QR codes, stuff like that. So this might be a really, really fun activity. So for, Cynthia, for someone like yourself, who I know that you are an advocate for library services in the biggest way. And this is a great way for faculty to get students in the library, navigating it and moving around and finding out all of the resources that are available to them.
As long as they pre-warn the staff, because we've had scavenger hunts which have hated before, because the students just run to the desk and say, what's the answer to this? What's the answer to this? And you don't know until the 58th person comes that, oh, this is a scavenger hunt.
So there you go. There you go. So I think maybe just like posting something in the rules that says you cannot ask a librarian for help on these things. You need to find it yourself. It can be very, very useful. But it could even,
that gives them the wrong image that you can't have help from the librarian. So it's a double-edged sword.
It does. It does. Maybe when we're back in person and everyone's vaccinated, it could be a thing where you have, maybe you're looking for a particular person who can help you in the library. And the scavenger hunt is take a selfie with your librarian or something like that. So these are all different options that are available. But what I think I'd like to do now, since we're halfway through our time, is turn things over to Andres so he can talk about the work that he's been doing with innovative pedagogy in his introductory art history classes. And Andres, if you want to take it away.
Thank you. I can definitely see myself using this particular app, Scaver, whatever the name is, for museum visits, for example, to get my students to go to museums and to check out
the URL in the chat again.
Cool. I think that would be great, especially when we take our students to New York City or things like that, to the Met. You can send them in guided tours to specific things so they can go hunting for specific images, and that way you can adapt it to course content, which could be really good. And I can see that happening for almost any kind of in situ visit that you could do anywhere, right? That you can actually create these kind of guided tours of different places, which I think is pretty cool. All right. Let's see if I can share my screen. Let me first open my file for a minute, otherwise that's not going to happen. Share screen. Yeah. Right.
Ooh, wow.
Can you guys see what I should be seeing? My Assassin's Creed screen with 3 different Assassin's Creed and 3 different logos at the bottom.
Yep.
Yes.
Excellent, great. As you can see, what I really want to talk to you about is how Assassin's Creed can be a fantastic tool for at least teaching specific content within the arts and humanities curricula. I want to talk to you about 3 video games, 3 of the long series of the games, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the most recent one. I want to talk to you about Assassin's Creed Origins, which is basically the birth of the storyline of the Assassin's Creed narrative. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which takes place in ancient Greece. Now, I've added 3 logos that you see over here on your right for 3 different iterations of Assassin's Creed, just to highlight how for this game, art, architecture, art history are wrapped into one neat package. For example, over here on your right, you're seeing the logo for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, that's using all of these different decorative elements that look like Nordic design features. Right here in the middle, you have an example of the logo that was used for Assassin's Creed Origins that incorporates the Eye of Horus, making a direct symbolic reference to Egyptian cultural life. And over here on your left, just the very, very, very original, the OG of all of these logos, which for us Assassin's Creed fans is basically the source, the code of everything that we do. Now, I very often have to teach in my survey of art and art history. I have to teach a lot of art and architecture that happened in ancient times. And a lot of my students over the years have had a really hard time relating to images like this. I could be as engaging as I could, and I could show them pictures and YouTube videos and diagrams and maps and all of these cool things about all of these different aspects that happen in this place. But very rarely were they really super engaged, let's say. They seemed very distant from their lives. They really didn't feel like it connected to them in any way, shape, or form. All of this changes with the video games. And right here, I'm showing you just a wide shot that I stole off the internet of Stonehenge, this exact same archaeological site, but this time as it's rendered in the video game. This has been incredibly successful as a pedagogical tool for me to teach the relevance of a lot of these historical objects, especially a lot of these sort of ruinous locations that seem to be so mysterious sometimes to our students today. It provides great context, so it literally places different locations within a map. It allows you to see, for example, the proximity to rivers or other waterways that could in some way or another contribute to the building of these places. And very often it even incorporates other outside important contextual factors that allow you to understand that place a little bit better. It is also rendered beautifully. It allows you as a user to navigate through these spaces, to literally come closer to all of these different cairnstones, feel their weightiness, feel their precariousness also, because they seem to be sort of held aloft, almost about to fall. You can actually compare the size of your character with the size of that building, something that you can't really do at all when you're just in the classroom, unless it is through virtual reality initiatives, which again have been proven successful, but only to a limited amount or limited degree. Now, what Assassin's Creed does is that it usually makes the player, the user, engage with these places. Sometimes the way in which you engage with these places is really far out and super video gamey and ultra fantastic. This is the case with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but there's other versions of the game where where you have to, for example, find different routes to navigate a particular interior space, let's say of a basilica, or where you have to climb through different levels of a church that you thought only had one particular elevation. So there's different ways in which the game forces you as a viewer to walk around these places, to by proxy almost experience them, which has been a massive change in how my students react to a lot of these historical elements. Before I used to get yawns, now I get excitement from a lot of them. Now, something that's also been accessible through Assassin's Creed Valhalla is it has allowed us to investigate other types of cultural products that were also relevant within, let's say in this case, early Nordic art and architecture. It allows us to see, for example, boats, right? Viking boats as they would have been in action as these sort of slithering sea serpents. And we can see, for example, how there's specific elements of this decoration, of this interlace motif, for example, that are being used in the video game, but that are borrowed from real life archaeological examples. So in that sense, it also activates art history. It makes it look to our students like art history is not something that's dead in the past, that archaeology is not just stuck in thousands of years ago, but that there is a practical use to it today. And I always insist to my students that in order for Assassin's Creed to be so accurate, they needed to hire art historians. They needed to hire archaeologists who are trained in these visual languages. I'll jump ahead. I have lots of images that I'm just going to give you a little heart attack if I just don't move forward. Because I really also wanted to talk to you about the work that I was able to do with one of my students last summer who ran an ATP project and who focused specifically on Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which takes place at the pinnacle of ancient Greece, right? At the great sort of moment, the great golden years of Pericles' renewal, let's say, of Athens. Now, usually, this is the image, this is the slide that I used to open a conversation with for the Acropolis and the art and architecture of the Acropolis. These ruinous buildings that for a lot of my students, again, really meant very little in terms of practical terms. This is how I start my conversation now, by showing them a digital reconstruction of this site as it was created by the team in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And then we start moving through some of these interior spaces. Accompanying these more standard art historical representations that you see over here on your right, now I also develop with my students, in partnership with my students, things like these, exercises like these, where I ask them to take a screenshot of a specific place and almost try to match it with some of these art historical diagrams. That way, some of this art historical knowledge and the vocabulary becomes a little bit more ingrained into their playing. That way, they start describing to their peers how they were walking around the Parthenon and the Erechtheion and they saw the statue of Athena Promachos. And some of their peers go, what the hell just happened? Did you just learn while playing video games? What is it? Which has been a pretty exciting sort of reflexive action. I'll finish by showing you the wonderful features or the wonderful things that the video game allows me to do, especially to talk about architectural elements and issues that are really important to my discipline, like the way that certain classical buildings look like, the temple facades. In art history, we have all of these definitions for all of these different terms that are almost like the anatomy of buildings, or like the skeleton. You have we all have different bone names. This is more or less trying to identify those unique features of different buildings. One of those profiles is known as the Doric, and it has, for example, very specific characteristics like a cornice, a triglyph, and an architrave. I know that all of you are bored already by this conversation. I know that you're already probably nodding off by my terms, right? Imagine my students. This is, though, what I'm able to do with a very simple homework exercise. I tell them to look at this diagram that we've studied in class that has been dried as a bone when I'm talking about it. And then I'm telling them to reinterpret it based on one image that they themselves produce from the video game. And then what they have to do is identify these terms in the game, see what matches, see what doesn't, and start to understand that once again, even today, this issue of art history and knowing some of this vocabulary, it's not just for defunct, dusty disciplines, but that it's in the opposite, quite alive and very much alive and kicking. It also gives students a sense, as I said, of scale. So if you can't get to the Parthenon, and especially if you can't go to the Parthenon in 320 of our Common Era, then maybe you can have a proxy approach by looking at reconstructions like these, which are based on pretty rigorous scholarly research that tries to incorporate some of the most recent understanding of what these buildings look like and what kind of roles they played within their societies. So, to make a long story short, Assassin's Creed, at least for me, has been a blessing in disguise because it's especially allowed me to connect with students, especially in the students who are just coming into the discipline of art history, in entirely different visual terms. It's made it it's made art historical knowledge and issues that are related to art history relevant to their everyday lives. And that has just made art history in itself that much more appealing to students. When you tell them, hey, maybe down the line you can get a job being a video game consultant for Ubisoft, where you can talk about, I don't know, colonial architecture in Boston, then they might go, oh, that sounds like a really cool avenue to follow. Maybe I want to do a little bit more of this new art history thing. That's it for me in terms of this presentation. So I'll stop sharing my screen and try to take some answers to some questions. Cool. Doubts, fears, questions?
I have a quick question. So thinking about accessibility and that not everybody is a huge gamer.
Yep.
What's your attitude? So, I require my students to play the game, but I haven't decided yet, and I have to decide because we're having a discussion in 2 weeks. Would you allow a student to use something like either YouTube or Twitch to watch someone play the game? Would you consider that to be participating in the same task as someone who actually plays the game?
This is a great question, and I think it comes up in two very important angles, right? So the first one is literal accessibility. I can't expect all of my students to have a PS5 or a top-of-the-line gaming console or a top-of-the-line computer or anything like that, right? So the majority of assignments that I've done that include students are either as extra credit assignments, right, that I just tag along to my courses. And then I also make sure that I design extra credit opportunities that are not video game based, right, that are just based in watch a movie or watch a Twitch video or watch someone playing a video game and then do this and that, right? Because it's difficult to, it's almost like adding a textbook to a requirement, right? Because usually like $60 a pop for a video game, so it's about that sort of price. I did have the advantage though of working very closely with one of them for an ATP. And that gave us a lot of room to research and explore all of these different things that could be done with the video game. So a lot of the diagrams that I showed you were the result of that kind of interaction, right? Where the homework was the ATP, and David was super happy that he got to spend half of the summer playing video games and then writing a paper about he played video games for half of the summer and learn in the process. So accessibility is a big issue in terms of like money, right? So I can't make it mandatory, so I try to accommodate. The other issue that I've come into a lot of, especially with the Assassin's Creed series, is that it's very male dominated. It's very, very, very dude centric, right? The majority of these video games, especially things that are first person shooters or things that are a lot of those games like Call of Duties or Halos, it's becoming a little bit more diversified, but we all know that the video game industry is also terrible towards women, right? And that there's all of these women that have been chased away from the world of gaming because dudes are so terrible. So there's also that limit to how much the video game can work, right? I usually get really good students who are dudes, nerdy dudes, who are able to play this and who like it very much, but in the numbers, just statistically speaking, of women that have come up with the same sort of enthusiasm, the same level of engagement is just fewer in comparison, although they've done significantly better work than some of my better nerdy dudes, but that's a different consideration. Go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say, I absolutely agree with Andres on that. And there are a few other areas of accessibility as well. Before I do that, I want to plug Andres. I know you'll be interested in this too. Latest copy of Near Eastern Archaeology magazine arrived in my mailbox today.
Nice.
Gaming, Tina Rosero
Nice.
right in the front, and the great work that she's doing at UNC Chapel Hill on archaeogaming.
Nice.
In terms of accessibility, there are a few other things that we can do. One of the things that I did in my face-to-face Emergence of Cities class, for example, is board games. I was able to bring my own board games into the classroom. Thereby, there was no expense for students. Additionally, this is something once we are back face-to-face that students are going to be craving. Students are going to be craving face-to-face interaction. And I think in terms of games, I think that role play, and I also think that board games are a great possibility. So for example, one of the things I did in Emergence of Cities, which is an upper level anthropology course that entails the transition from hunter-gatherer subsistence base to an urban environment, is I play a board game called Stone Age, which is essentially about Stone Age civilizations having to manage resources and manage the pros and cons of farming versus hunting and gathering. I'm able to introduce things such as Lewis Binford's demographic theory of agricultural emergence and William Rathje's trade imperative theory and all these other anthropological theories in upper level courses. So that's one other possible avenue towards accessibility, is to go with board gaming, or simply once we are face to face, also share it with students simply through sharing it in the classroom. You can use, I talked in the Zoom thing about a process you can go through that will allow you to integrate OBS and Twitch and Zoom. OBS is the same kind of software that Twitch users use to stream video games online. You can use this same software to stream video games on Twitch and allow yourself and select users within a Zoom environment to do so as well.
That's a double-sided coin almost, I think, of this accessibility issue, right? Because you could have Twitch as being really accessible, and maybe we could run entire courses, or I could run entire courses of the history of architecture in Minecraft or something through Twitch. And I have tons of students who have recreated like the Hagia Sophia on Minecraft. I go, wow, you've spent a lot of time doing that. Maybe you should have written your paper, but there's different ways to go about it, because that could be one avenue.
Right. And there are other video games that are more gender neutral. So for example,
Sure.
This Saturday, I'm actually presenting about my use of Civilization 5 in my Emergence of Cities class. And games such as that, which are more, I would say, turn-based civilization builders, are much more gender neutral. And that's an option in that arena. I would also say that this also goes beyond the humanities and social sciences. It goes beyond archaeology and art history. So for example, in the sciences, I was chatting with a student in my archaeology class about geographic information systems, which is used by Dr. Balsdorf and others in the geography department. And he said, when I was showing them ArcGIS and how it works, he says, wow, this is exactly like the map making system in Zelda Breath of the Wild. And having looked into it, yeah, it kind of is. So there are all sorts of other avenues that go beyond the humanities and social sciences. There's an evolution game that is about the transition from early hominins to Homo sapiens that has been used in classroom environments. And there are a lot of other games that have a lot of other options beyond Assassin's Creed or Civ 5 and beyond archaeology and art history. There are a lot of different avenues and disciplines that games can stretch into as well.
I just like playing Assassin's Creed and Civ 6 too much.
I think Civ 5 is better than Civ 6, but
it's true. It's true.
I think it's true. There you
The
go.
original.
You got the. I actually have the original Avalon Hill Civilization. I have the original. I think it's like 1974. I found it at a yard sale for next to nothing. I've got the original Avalon Hill, I think 1974 version of the Civilization board game. So there you go. Is there anything else that anybody wants to add, or any questions anybody has before we wrap up today? Ooh, one last thing. Yes, Board Game Geek is a great opportunity, and they also have trading online. You can do auction and trading of games. So if you have a board game that's not working out for you. So a couple things that I wanted to mention besides gaming. Movement breaks in the classroom can be so important. I've encountered more than one professor who has a single day seminar class that's 2 hours and 40 minutes and is doing it synchronously over Zoom through the entire class session without breaks. Yeah. Movement breaks are great. So whether it's movement breaks to just being able to take a moment to step aside or to simply do something else, there are great opportunities. I would say additionally, sorry, I'm trying to find it online. There are these great movement break videos on YouTube. From Uju Videos, that's UJU Videos on YouTube, has great movement break videos for all sorts of different age levels, from K through 12 all the way through until college level. And these are breaks that allow students to either meditate or get up and exercise or do something, because I'm telling you right now, a 2 hour and 40-minute Zoom class with no breaks is
Criminal.
It's downright criminal. It really is. So definitely also something to mention. Any other questions? All right, everyone. Well, Andres, Eric, I think I speak for everyone when I say thank you so much for joining us today. This was a blast. Thanks for, oh yes, thank you, Lord. We also don't want to forget to talk about tomorrow's lesson as well. We have our OTL TTC forum tomorrow to finish up Student Engagement Week. And Eric, could you remind us what the when that is and what the topic is?
Yes, it's I know Cindy Kane and Kevin Kennedy, our TTC fellow, are presenting, and the session is called Matching Tech Tools and Learning Activities, and it is at 1 p.m. tomorrow.
1 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you very much, Eric. I did not have that information at my fingertips, so it's greatly appreciated.
Sure thing. And thanks for the session. This was great. I got some really cool ideas, so I really appreciate it.
And Rich, I can tell you to answer that question for that you have for Cynthia. Yes, students can borrow board games from the Maxwell. At the very least, I know faculty can. There's a great one as an anthropology professor that I want to plug called Bafa Bafa, which splits students into two distinct cultures and have them observe those cultures to experience culture shock and ethnocentrism. It is great, and I've worked with it before with Luis Paredes from Institutional Diversity and Luann Falls from Second Language Services, and that's a great resource. And Richard also mentioned a great Underground Railroad board game in the Maxwell collection as well.
I'm gonna head to a meeting, so thanks, folks. We'll catch you later.
All right, I think we're finishing up anyway. Bye, everybody.
Happy
Thank you.
gaming.
Thank
Have a good
you.
one, everybody.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
day.